Next on Unsolved Mysteries. Christy Mutzfield, Todd Kelly, and Mahfouz Huck. All three were players in a torrid lover's triangle that led to murder. A burning truck turns out to be a trap. And now the ghost of the murder victim is haunting the scene of the crime. In the Arizona desert, a passenger train crashes, the result of sabotage. 60 years earlier, another train had been derailed. Is there a connection? And a rape victim turns her personal trauma into an amazing ability to sketch criminals from eyewitness accounts. 5 compelling mysteries, some just waiting to be solved. I'm Dennis Farina. Join us. Hamilton, Indiana. Early in the morning, Christy Mutzfield arrived at the home of her boyfriend, only to flee in terror moments later.
I saw him laying on the floor, and I screamed his name, and I could just see just by looking at him that something was very wrong, wasn't right.
Christy's boyfriend, Todd, was dead. He had been stabbed 7 times in the chest, back, and wrist. Christy was in shock. Just hours earlier, the two lovers had been here, together. Investigators spoke with Christy and learned that she was at the very center of a love triangle. She had been involved with both Todd and another man. Christy's other lover was now the prime suspect in Todd's murder. Christy met Todd Kelly during their junior year in high school. It was love at first sight, especially for Todd.
After graduation, he asked me to marry him. And I guess I said no. I said I really wasn't ready. I thought there was other things I really wanted to do right now. And that's pretty much where we broke it off right there.
The next fall, Christy enrolled in a small college just 7 miles from Hamilton. She soon began dating a student named Mahfouz Huck.
He was very outgoing, very energetic. He was interested in what I had to say, and he was interested in what I thought and what I believed in.
But Mahfouz was not what he seemed to be. Shortly after he met Christy, he was arrested for 3 separate robberies. In one of them, he stole $100,000 worth of jewelry from his own aunt.
After he was arrested and he had to go on house arrest, he became very possessive. And he said that if he ever saw me with anybody else, that he would probably kill him and then kill me.
A few months later, Christy rekindled her romance with Todd, but Mahfouz, who lived nearby, did not back off. The day before the murder, Todd was at the home of a friend when Mahfouz showed up unexpectedly.
What can I do for you?
Mahfouz asked Todd if he was going to quit seeing her, and Todd told him no.
She told me she's in love with me.
Their voices were never raised or nothing like that. They shook hands. I mean, and really it seemed like it was pretty much all over and done with, you know.
36 hours later, Todd was dead, and his house was swarming with police. Authorities determined that he had been murdered around 3:15 a.m. Investigators immediately noticed that the crime scene had been tampered with.
Stacy, is this where you found the body?
Yeah.
Todd's body had been cleaned up and then moved into the living room from another part of the house.
Upon further checking of the house, we noticed that there were no sheets in the bed in the bedroom. We also discovered a spot where there was blood on the floor in the bedroom. It was very hard to find this at first because it had been wiped clean.
2 eyewitnesses told police they had seen Mahfouz between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. on the night of the murder. He had been walking barefoot in the direction of Todd's house.
You want to get married?
At that very same moment, Christy and Todd were together inside.
I thought you wanted to.
When we were in bed, I heard noises outside.
What's that?
What?
Todd said it was probably just a dog because he had a dog tied up out back, and he said it was nothing to worry about. It was getting kind of late, and I told him I had to go home because I hadn't really been home for quite a while, and I knew my father would be upset. So we left, and he said he was going to stay up all night, and he wanted to get something to drink.
Christy says that at 2:30 a.m., she and Todd drove into town. She believes Mahfouz entered the house while they were gone.
We drove back to his house, and said goodbye in the car, and he gave me a kiss.
Don't forget to come back.
I won't.
I'll leave the door
Christy
open.
says she dropped Todd back at his house around 3 a.m. The coroner determined that he was murdered just 15 minutes later. At 4:30 a.m., Mahfouz called Christy from his parents' home 10 miles away.
Hey,
Morning.
what time is it?
2 hours later, he showed up in her bedroom. According to Christy, she had broken off the relationship for good, not knowing what he had done.
Hope you're happy.
Excuse me?
I hope you have a happy life.
It kind of scared me, the tone of voice he had, and I said, "Excuse me?" He says, "I hope you have a happy life." And then he walked out.
At first glance, it seemed like an open and shut case. Mahfouz Huck had murdered Todd Kelly in a fit of jealous rage and fled. But Todd Kelly's family noticed some inconsistencies in Christy's story. They think she knows much more than she's saying.
According to all the evidence that we have dug up and the evidence that the police have, there is no way that she was not there. She had to be there during the murder. When Todd and Christy returned home, and they probably started making love, and Mahfouz waited in the bushes. When he saw what was happening, that's when his jealousy took over, and he could no longer control himself and decided to finish the act.
What was that?
What?
When Christy said she heard the noise, it was Mahfouz coming in the door. I do believe at that point, Mahfouz convinced her to help him cover up the murder.
I don't know why they want to blame me. I mean, I know Todd and I had our hardships, and I hurt him and he hurt me.
The possibility of an accomplice is pure speculation at this point in time. There's no hard evidence.
It amazes me how a man alone could clean up that entire room, clean up the entire mess he had made, move the body, entirely clean the body, and also walk all the way back home in the amount of time that they had reported receiving another phone call. He had to have some help.
The Kelly family believes that Christy actually gave Mahfouz a ride home. They also question her statement about what happened when she returned to Todd's house at 7 that morning. Christy claims that she did not immediately notice Todd's body when she returned, yet it was lying right at the front door.
We're not accusing Christy. The only problem is we feel that there's some inconsistencies in the things that she has told us. We've asked Christy for a polygraph examination, and she has refused to do that.
Todd's family, they've They've been very hard on me from the beginning. They harassed me, accused me, unjustly accused me of everything. They wouldn't even let me go to his funeral. I realize they're hurting, and I don't think that they realize that I'm hurting too.
Mahfouz Huq is still the prime suspect. He was last known to be in Bangladesh, but authorities believe he travels to the United States frequently. Huq is 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighs approximately 160 pounds. He has a dark complexion with brown eyes and black hair. Update. Mahfouz Huq has finally been captured, and American officials have petitioned for his return. Here's one of our staff with details.
After hiding out in Bangladesh and India for 24 years, Mahfouz Huq was extradited to the U.S. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 40 years in prison.
Next, a family in Florida claims the ghost of a murder victim has returned to haunt the scene of the crime. For several months, June Ferris had the same disturbing dream about a strange house that she had never even seen.
I would come out of the bedroom, go out into the hallway, and I would turn to the right and go down the narrow staircase. I knew the house had a front staircase, but I never used the front staircase in the dream. It was always the back. And I would turn to the left and go through the kitchen, around a refrigerator and stove that were on the one wall. I had a feeling of anxiety that something was going to happen that I should know about. And I would go out the kitchen door onto the porch. And that's where I would wake up. And I suppose that this dream continued maybe once a month until we moved to Orlando 4 years later.
After June and her family moved to Florida, she was driving through the small town of Claremont when a particular house caught her attention. She returned with a friend for a closer look. Soon after entering, June experienced an eerie sensation.
We went through the downstairs and went up the front staircase. And I had a feeling of, I guess you would say, deja vu. I had definitely been here before.
Oh, and look, more stairs. I wonder where they go. I know where they go. They go down through the kitchen.
So as we walked through the house, it definitely was the same house of the dream. And I knew every room in the house, every closet, where everything was. It was just a real unusual experience. Not scary. It was a good feeling. It was a feeling like I had come home.
June, her husband, and 3 of their children moved into the old house. Almost immediately, odd things began to happen.
My father had brought the boat out on the trailer, and the trailer hitch was on a sawhorse-type stand. And it looked as if someone had reached over, picked the trailer hitch up, and just dropped it on the ground.
Robin, what are you doing?
I didn't do it. And it happened several times again afterwards. And it was so fast that you really wanted to think to yourself, did I really see that? Did that really happen?
Over the next few years, the strange events became more frequent.
The music boxes coming on really assured me that we definitely had a ghost in that house. But the switches were not on. They were just wound up. And they were playing. All of them were playing. And I felt like we did before then. But it wasn't scary to me anymore. It was kind of fascinating.
June's younger daughter, Lori, and her boyfriend, Bob, had another strange experience.
Who's that?
It's just my mom.
Now, as to how much corrosion has occurred over the last 40
I heard something with boots come through the kitchen.
It's not your mother.
And walk down the hallway and stop in the opening going into the parlor. And I had a feeling that whatever it was standing right there watching us. And the sound of its boots continued down the hallway, and I followed it. And at that point, I was really very, very scared. I'd never encountered anything like that. I was just so terrified I couldn't even move. I was a firm disbeliever in ghosts, but after everything that's happened to me in that house, there is such a thing as ghosts, and there is a ghost in that house.
Everyone was convinced the house was haunted, but no one had actually seen a ghost. Yet.
I was walking up the stairway in the foyer of the house. I felt a cold chill. It's almost like when you open your freezer in the hot summertime. It was just like a vapor, just like a cloud of smoke, kind of, you know, it's there and then it's gone. But it was very definite. It was very definitely a person.
3 months later, Laurie's boyfriend Bob had another ghostly encounter.
I was upstairs preparing to paint. I opened the attic door, and there in front of me was a white vapor, almost in the shape of a human. And as I took another step forward, this vapor came at me, and it went right through me.
Bob checked out old newspapers. He was surprised to discover that the previous owner of the house had been gunned down in his own backyard. The victim's name was John Harden, and Bob began to believe that he was their ghost. Bob learned that on the night John Harden was killed, he was awakened by a disturbance outside. His pickup truck was on fire. Harden was shot once in the chest with a single-barrel shotgun. He died less than an hour later. It was later determined that the fire had been deliberately set, and no one was ever arrested.
Had there been a motive, we could have proceeded with the case investigation a lot better. There was several things that was brought to our attention, but there was never a firm motive established.
Could John Harden's spirit be haunting his former home? There do seem to be similarities between the ghost and the man himself. According to his first wife, Harden was a loving and overprotective parent.
When our children were little, Johnny would be very concerned about them, always going to the other room to check them. Even as they got older, he was always concerned.
The Ferris family believes that the spirit in their house has the same nurturing attitude.
Apparently, he was very fond of children and babies because my grandson had an experience with him. He would wake up and see this man standing over his bed, and of course that would scare the bejeebers out of me. Mom! Mom! And it happened several times until Robin went into the room one night before Raymond went to sleep. And she spoke to the ghost. And she said, please do not come back in this room anymore, and please leave Raymond alone. And after that, he didn't come back, or at least if he did, Raymond didn't wake up.
When June Ferris learned the details of John Harden's life and death, she saw a startling connection with the dream that had bothered her for years.
When I first learned that John Harden came down the back stairs into the kitchen and out the back door, which was the same path that I took in my dreams, I felt like there was something there that I should know. Maybe if the dream had continued, I would have learned something, that there was a link. And in some way, he's trying to tell us what happened to him and even help us find the killer.
The Ferris family eventually moved out of the old mansion. The new owners also told tales of a restless spirit roaming the halls at night. As for the murder of John Hardin, Florida police reopened his case, but it has never been solved. Coming up, a sabotaged train in the Arizona desert and its eerie resemblance to a train wreck 50 years earlier. And next, a veteran wounded in Vietnam is searching for the GI who saved his life.
We're gonna take a little run.
In 1964, Mitchell Shigemoto made it through a rigorous training course and joined a prestigious airborne division of the Army. The next year, Mitchell and his unit were transferred to Vietnam. Here, within the ranks of his own army, Mitchell ran into a strange bias because he looked so much like the enemy.
Move on, Jap. Hey, you got a problem? Yeah, I don't serve zipper heads. Let's go. You wanna go? Come on! Come on!
Whoa, hey. What's the problem? Why don't you just do your job and serve the soldier?
All right, just relax, okay?
One soldier, James Pearson, stood up for Mitchell. Mitchell and James had become best friends when they were stationed in Okinawa. They were sent to Vietnam together. Once on the ground, their unit ran into heavy gunfire. When Mitchell caught a bullet in the thigh, James came to the rescue.
Turn the right!
There was one sniper that was keying in on us. James took a position right in front of me, just like he was trying to block off the shots, you know. James actually saved my life. And what I say to him, I said, James, I never had a chance to thank you personally. I want to thank you now. I really appreciate everything that he did for me.
James and another soldier left the firing line to carry Mitchell to safety. A few weeks later, Mitchell was sent home to Hawaii. He never saw James Pearson again until his story aired on Unsolved Mysteries. On the night of our broadcast, one of our viewers, retired Lieutenant Colonel Truman Plants, was deeply moved. He took it upon himself to track down James Pearson and found him in Chicago. We arranged a reunion for the two veterans and their families. The two buddies saw each other for the first time in 30 years.
Mitchell! How you doing, pal? Great. God, it's great to see you. Great to see you.
Still a platoon.
I wasn't going to leave him out there alone under those conditions. I couldn't have did it. Well, regulations permitted it, rules permitted or not. I just couldn't have did it.
It took a lot from a real special person to do something like that. And my wife, she, you know, when she heard that story, she made it a point to try to locate him with no success until we found you guys.
For James and Mitchell, the joy of being reunited is impossible to describe.
They haven't come up with that word yet. when they come up with that word, I'll write you and let you know. But there's no word for this feeling, you know, for right now. They haven't come up with that word.
James is retired now and lives in Chicago. Mitchell is still working at the Navy shipyard at Pearl Harbor. Despite the distance, they still keep in touch. Their friendship will never die. One October night, 60 miles southwest of Phoenix, Amtrak's Sunset Limited passenger train jumped the track at 50 miles an hour. 4 cars plunged more than 30 feet off a trestle into a dry riverbed. 1 person was killed, scores were injured. The cause of the wreck was sabotage.
When we arrived at the scene, it was apparent that someone had tampered with the rails. The investigation determined that 29 spikes were removed, purposely removed. And not only were the spikes removed, but someone had pushed the rail inside so that the two rails were not connected.
Additional evidence convinced authorities that the saboteurs knew a lot about railroads. The signal circuits, electrical wires that run through the track, had been kept intact. That meant the train crew had no warning that there was a problem with the rails.
The FBI believes that they picked that particular spot in order to create the most damage and possibly the most injuries or death. The train was going about 50 miles an hour. It's on a curve, and it occurred right before a trestle.
Investigators soon discovered many similarities to another act of sabotage more than a half a century before. In 1939, 24 people were killed and 117 injured in another suspicious train wreck in the Nevada desert.
The most mysterious connection between both accidents is the fact that the sabotage was done ahead of a bridge in a desert country of remote location. There was definitely care in advance that the wires were intact at all times. Merely moving one piece of metal, in this case one rail, a matter of less than 4 inches, allowed both trains to careen off on the curve as they crossed the river, and the damage occurred.
Curiously, the story of the 1939 crash had been published in a journal for train buffs shortly before the Amtrak accident. Federal agents questioned many of the readers, but came up empty-handed. Investigators have just one other concrete clue. Near the accident site, FBI agents found 4 copies of a computer-printed letter attacking the federal government. It was signed, Sons of the Gestapo.
We have not been able to determine the existence of such a group, but we're still trying to investigate to determine whether or not that is a red herring to try to throw us off the investigation, or whether or not that particular group exists.
The one person killed in the crash was a sleeping car attendant named Mitchell Bates. Whoever is responsible for this tragic wreck will be charged with murder as well as sabotage. If you have any information, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, over 1,000 criminals have been arrested because of this sketch artist's incredible talent. You're about to meet a police sketch artist whose drawings are amazingly accurate. Lois Gibson is her name, and her sketches have resulted in the arrest of more than 1,000 criminals. But Lois's story goes far beyond artistic talent. She herself was the victim of a vicious crime. Lois Gibson has been a police sketch artist in Texas for more than 20 years.
Now for the easy part, just relax. To be able to look through the eyes of the victim, I think you have to have a lot of empathy. You have to be in their shoes, and I've gotten real good at that, and I empathize greatly. Well, you know, I know people...
Lois's ability to relate to a victim of crime comes from an incident that happened when she was a young, aspiring actress in Los Angeles.
Listen, can I call you back? Someone's at my door. Okay? All right, okay. Yeah, who is it? Oh, hey. What's going on?
A man pretending to be a neighbor pushed his way into her home.
Who are you?
Looks like you need a little He immediately started choking me. He went to my throat and just almost snapped my head off.
The assailant sexually assaulted Lois and nearly strangled her to death before fleeing. She never reported the assault because she was overwhelmed with shame.
I was so destroyed, I couldn't even walk out of my apartment. And the idea that I would actually tell anybody was ridiculous. It was absurd. It was undoable.
6 weeks later, an amazing coincidence happened.
I drove up this street that I didn't mean to drive up. And then when I got to the top of this winding hill, I looked on a balcony, and I saw that guy that attacked me.
You filthy pigs! I know my rights.
And he was cuffed.
Look at everybody. What are you looking at?
I got to see justice. And that's when I fell in love with what police do.
Following her attack, Lois moved to San Antonio, got married, and had a family. She continued to keep her traumatic memories to herself. As an outlet, she began to develop her talent for art. It would become her answer to the rage she felt when confronted by crime.
So business is good then.
I was over visiting my girlfriend, and they came on the news talking about a dance instructor who had been raped in front of her 11 and 12-year-old students.
God, that's horrible.
I had these vicious feelings. I couldn't stand it. And then all of a sudden, in less than a second, it hit me. And I told her, Diane, I could draw that guy. That would help the cops catch him. And if they did, I knew in my mind, I didn't tell her, that would make me healed. That would heal up my bad feelings from my attack.
But Lois realized she needed to prove to herself and the police that she could draw someone only from an eyewitness description. So a friend of hers went to a nearby gas station, looked at the attendant, and then returned to describe the man to Lois.
This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
And all of a sudden, I started reliving my attack, and I realized I needed to be able to do this really bad, and that it was going to kill me if I couldn't do it.
The two women brought the sketch to the gas station and compared it to the attendant. It matched perfectly. The Houston Police Department decided to give Lois a shot. The results were astounding. Her sketches have helped capture suspects in 30% of the cases she worked on. Over 1,000 criminals have been arrested.
The drawings that Lois has done in the past for us have proven to be extremely accurate. It is almost uncanny, the resemblance that the composite carries to the actual physical appearance of the individuals that we have arrested.
Lois's sketches are significantly different from the ones that you traditionally see. There's a three-dimensional depth there. It's like Lois is seeing the suspect just the way the victim did.
Lois was called in to help with a case that involved the abduction of two brothers, Jason and Philip Bomer.
Gentlemen, excuse us. How you guys doing? Okay.
The boys were at a shopping mall when they were approached by two well-dressed men who said they had a computer to sell, cheap. The men led them to a van in the mall's parking lot.
Get in the van! Get in the van right now!
At gunpoint, Jason was forced into the back seat of the van and Philip into the front. The kidnappers then headed for the freeway.
A lot of stuff goes through your mind when you're sitting there with a gun at you. How you're gonna get out of the situation or what? That's basically the main thing that was in my head. How am I gonna get out of this?
As the van approached 70 miles per hour, the brothers became convinced they were going to die. Both felt there was only one thing to do.
Hey, what are you doing?
They both hit the freeway shoulder with devastating force. Philip suffered cuts and asphalt burns from head to toe. Jason's collarbone was shattered and his leg was severely fractured. Shortly after being released from the hospital, Jason sat down for a session with Lois Gibson.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pick out different eyes.
I tell the witnesses immediately that someone tried to kill me for fun, so I understand. And they always like hearing that. What's the letter and number? My attack has turned into a tool to relax my witnesses and help them get justice.
Police are looking for these two men in connection with the kidnapping and attempted robbery of Jason and Philip Bomer. If you have any information, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, patients put their faith in a doctor and his wonder drug, but both are fakes. Helen Root packs her bags for a trip to the Dominican Republic.
Sounds like you're in good hands.
But she is not headed for a tropical vacation. She's on a mission to save her life.
I had 3rd stage colon cancer, and the whole right side of my colon was removed. They wanted me to have 6 months of chemotherapy, and I chose not to have that, and I was looking for an alternative.
So Helen and her husband, William, mortgaged their home for $40,000. That's what they needed for the experimental drug therapy. A friend told them about Dr. Kaplinger in the Dominican Republic. On his resume was a long list of medical schools, including Harvard University. Kaplinger's remedy, a drug called Imustim, could supposedly fight cancer, AIDS, and hepatitis. In Santo Domingo, this drug did not need FDA approval. At first, Helen was not impressed by Kaplinger's facility.
Right down here is Dr. Kaplinger's office.
But within a few hours, she was relieved to finally meet the doctor she had heard so much about.
Nice to meet you.
He looked very professional and very caring and very concerned about my condition. And so I thought, well, finally I'm going to get some good help here.
It could become malignant, and
Kaplinger said his review of her file revealed a small tumor that needed aggressive treatment.
Because of the degrees that he had, because of his background, I thought I was in excellent hands.
Hello?
9 a.m. Saturday morning, and it's my husband on the phone, almost hysterical, saying, Helen, you've got to come home. That man is not a doctor.
Helen's husband discovered that Kaplinger was a fugitive wanted by the FBI, and his cure-all drug, probably just a combination of illegal steroids, vitamins, and amphetamines.
Kaplinger was a medical imposter. He had more phony credentials than any other medical imposter in history.
Kaplinger is a con man because he plays on the people that are dying. He plays on their families. He gives them that one last hope to live, takes their money, and provides very little care.
He never went to any medical school. He got some of his papers by sending money to British diploma mills that simply issued them when they got his money.
Dr. Baird has created an extensive website dedicated to medical scams. That's how Helen's husband learned the disturbing truth about Kaplinger.
When I heard that he was a fraud, I feared for her life. There she is down there all by herself. I thought, boy, how's she gonna handle this? She doesn't speak any Spanish, she doesn't know anyone, and now her friends are the enemy.
What could be more important than your life?
He said, there's no emergency at home that's more important, Helen, than your health.
I can't save your life. I think you're making a great mistake.
Helen insisted. The next day, Kaplinger agreed to return half of the $40,000 payment she made. Years after her ordeal, Helen is cancer-free, but she's one of the lucky ones.
In many, many cases, they'd never make it out of the Dominican Republic. Many of them died there.
Linda and Dave Cernan also put their faith in Kaplinger. Dave was suffering from hepatitis C and could not get a liver transplant. So they decided to use Linda's inheritance and go to Santo Domingo.
Buenos dias. I'm Mrs. Cernan, and I'm here to check in my husband, Dave.
The money that we had to come up with, was worth every penny because Dave wanted to live. We would have done anything, in which we did do everything we could, and by going down there, I felt like, it was an answer from God. Dave was hooked up to an IV for 6 to 8 hours a day, and on alternating days, he received vitamins. The other days was a clear liquid that we were told that was the Immustim. Dr. Kaplinger assured us that Dave's chances of living were very, very good.
Kaplinger was lying. Dave's condition got worse.
Well, with Immustim, things actually get worse before they can get better.
Dr. Kaplinger reassured me that a lot of times the patient will go downhill before the drug really kicks in, before the vitamins really kick in, before the treatment really produces extravagant results.
Look, I'm gonna go home. I wanna see John.
Dave hadn't been strong enough to get out of bed for weeks, but Linda wanted to get him home to see his son.
We realized we had made a mistake at this point, and we were going home, and we left. When we got to Santo Domingo, Dave was weak, but he was walking, he was eating. At the end of 6 weeks, my Dave could not stand, he could not eat, he could not even talk to me. He was too weak to even hold a phone.
Dave Cernan died just 24 hours after returning to the United States.
I very much believe Dr. Kaplinger killed my husband.
Update. After avoiding arrest for 2 years, Gregory Kaplinger turned himself in to Dominican Republic officials. He was brought to the U.S. for trial. It is estimated that Gregory Kaplinger swindled over $1 million from patients and investors. At his trial, he was convicted of fraud and is currently serving a 14-year sentence.